Okay, we appreciate those of you joining us this evening and taking the time to commit and hopefully learn a little bit from the presentation this evening concerning soils. Again, there's no way that we can cover everything that you need to know about soils, but I'm going to try to give you some of the basics that hopefully will help you understand a little bit more about some of the things that you might look at whenever you get a soil sample report, and just try to understand a little bit about more what it says so that you can utilize it whether you're a farmer or whether you're a Semi-Grow licensee or distributor. So we'll go ahead and move into the presentation. We'll be looking at, starting off talking about soil sampling and why it's important and how to go about doing that, the correct procedures for it, and talk a little bit about the soil charges, the positive and negatives in there and how they attract each other and how that fits into the whole scheme of the chemistry of the soil. We'll look at the CEC or cation exchange capacity, also the base saturation percentages, pH, organic matter, and then we'll wind up talking about some of the nutrients and their functions in growing plants. So start off a little bit about healthy soil and how it functions. The five major functions of a good healthy soil are that they do help regulate water, and whether this is from rainfall, irrigation, or snow melt, things like this. So the better this ability of the soil to absorb water, the less runoff and washing away of your very important topsoil and removal of nutrients takes place there. So we want to try to get as much of this water into the soil as possible. Also, a healthy soil helps sustain plant and animal life. So, you know, every living thing depends on the soil. So it's up to us to try to do our best job to be good stewards of our land and the soil that we have. Also, a good healthy soil helps filter potential pollutants. So the minerals and microbes are responsible for helping doing jobs like filtering and buffering and immobilizing nutrients so that they are not, so that they do not become pollutants. Also, good soil helps with cycling nutrients, whether it's carbon, nitrogen, phosphorus, or many other nutrients, because they're stored and then they're transformed into ways that the plant can utilize them and are cycled through the soil for plant usage. Then also soils are certainly important for supporting structures, whether it's our homes or other type buildings or architectural treasures. Soils are very important for this reason also. So let's move into why we need a soil analysis. Again, this helps us to determine what nutrients are actually out there in the soil. If we don't know what we're starting with out there, then there's no way for us to measure what's going on in this soil that we're trying to manage and grow crops with. So a soil analysis does give us that starting point. It also is an accurate account for nutrient removal and replacement. So we need to know what that crop is, what is being removed from the soil by that particular crop, so that we know how to replace that in a more efficient manner. Also, for just some general crop statistics about the production history and things like that of the soil and the crop that's grown there. And also to manage our fertilizer applications. Doesn't matter whether it's a chemical type fertilizer that we're applying or whether it's a manure that's going out there. We need to manage the nutrients that we're applying out there. So if we know what's in the soil, if we know what the crop's utilizing, then we can better apply these things in a more efficient way. Okay, a soil analysis, again, whenever we send something to the lab, they can only test what we send them. So it's important that we take good random soil samples and send to them to be able to get, better information to work with. So you need to sample good areas in a field. If you have problem areas out there where crops are not growing well, you certainly need to sample the problem area as well as the good area. Keep those separate and code them that way so that you know it whenever you get the results back as to what was the problem area or the good area out there. So you can use it not only for just a general analysis, but also to figure out what may be going on, why you're having problems in one area and not in another. Also for different soil types, if the soil does change in a particular field, which it does very often, then you certainly need to find those areas. You can use a soil map a lot of times in determining where these areas are and sample those separately. If you have different crops in the field, or if you're doing crop rotation, things like that, you need to sample maybe those areas separately, because again, different crops remove nutrients at different rates. Okay, also appropriate sampling techniques are very important for you to get a good quality sample. If the soil is going to be disturbed or tilled, then you should sample, take a probe sample down to about 6 or 7 inches. If it's an area that's untilled, say for example a pasture or hay field, then you only need to sample down to about 4 inches. And you need a minimum of at least 1 sample per 20 acres. A lot of people like to lower that down to 10 acres. There are some private ag consultants out there that do soil, pull soil samples and do soil mapping on farms. A lot of these are down to where they're doing it on every 2 acres. So that's a lot of information to go through, but a lot of these things they can plug into their computer systems with their farm equipment and tractors and be more efficient in applying nutrients to these fields. So again, the better job you do in sampling, the better the information you will get back to help you make decisions. Okay, the good first principle in managing soils is to feed the soil and let the soil feed the plant. Secondly, the fertility level we are working to achieve is to get the right amount of each nutrient, and we call this soil balance. And what this means, true soil balance, means determining and adding the proper amount of each nutrient that is needed out there. Again, so the only way that we're going to know this is to have a very good soil sample pulled. One thing I'd like to mention now about pulling these soil samples also, that if you're working with cropland, to get the best indication of what's going on in that soil would be to pull those samples in the spring of the year. After that crop has been harvested in the fall, it's given some time for that crop residue to decay and some of those nutrients to get back into the soil, so you actually see what's going on out there. Now if it's in a hay field or pasture, things like that, those can be pulled in the fall of the year. So this time of year is a good time to hit those areas and get those samples pulled. So if you do need to make changes like liming or things like that, that can be done in the fall, and it gives that lime time to break down and to work in those areas. But really, if you do not have a current soil analysis, no matter what your crop is, now is the best time to get that done. Okay, I told you we was going to talk about the soil charges, the positive and negative charges, and how that works within the chemistry of the soil. Your fertilizers, for them to be held in the soil and available for plants, they must have a positive charge to be able to be held to these soil colloids or particles there in the soil. So your positive charge elements that are in your fertilizers are called cations. Your colloids of the soil come from clay and organic matter, and again, they have a negative charge. So you have a negative charged soil and a positive charged fertilizer nutrient which attracts and holds each other. So negative sites on a clay particle will attract and hold your positive charged elements. Some of your most common positive charge elements that you might want to be aware of, these include things like your calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. These are your cations that again are found in your fertilizer elements that carry a positive charge and will attach to your negative clay particles. So your negative charged elements will include things like nitrogen, phosphorus, and sulfur. And these are called anions. Again, these are not held to your negative soil particles. Negative ions are not held and will remain free to move in soil solution or water. So these negative charge elements can leach or move with the water and carry other elements with them when they move. And these would include the cations, since they're negatives and they can move a positive. So whenever you do get movement like that, you can lose, say, your calcium or other things like that in it. Okay, one of the first things that you need to do for your land is to correctly measure the amount of clay and humus that the soil has in it. And when you do your soil sampling, you get your report back, should be an area on there that reports the CEC, the cation exchange capacity. And what this is the ability of that soil to exchange nutrients, or what we call the holding power of that soil. That soil has to have the ability to hold these positive cations in there for them to remain there available long enough for the plant to utilize them. So your CEC is very important. For an example, a CEC with a rating of 10 will hold twice as many pounds of nutrients as a CEC of 5. So again, that can be very critical, and we'll look at more specific numbers on this here shortly. Okay, so again, one of the first things you need to know is that CEC, which is the holding ability of nutrients for plant uptake. If that CEC is less than 15, that is considered to be a low rating. The lower that CEC is, normally will indicate a sandier type soil. If you can get that CEC up close in the proximity of 15 and up close to 25, that's what we would consider an ideal range for that. If it goes over 25, then that CEC is in the high range, and that would be a very heavy clay type soil. So sometimes it's a little difficult, no matter whether you're on the low side or the high side. So, you know, the soils that we have are the soils that we have to work with. So, but educating yourself and knowing what this CEC is and understanding some of these things that we're going to cover tonight will help you better manage your nutrients and the holding capacity of a soil. Okay, more on the cation exchange capacity. What happens here is that if you have a high level of one nutrient, it can affect the uptake of another nutrient. So, for example, if you get too much calcium in a soil, it can limit the uptake of your potassium. Or if you get too much potassium, it can limit the uptake of magnesium, even if your magnesium levels are considered to be high in the soil. Another way to look at this also is that a soil that has a deficiency is also a soil with too much of something else. And that's because if you do have a nutrient that's in excess there, it is taking the place of something else that should be there. It's pushing it out. So again, soil balance is very important for us to try to achieve, to make sure that all of our nutrients can be available for plant uptake. The second thing is after your CEC is your base saturation percent. And this is the percent of your nutrients that should be what we consider optimal for plant growth. And this is a composition of your cations, which is your calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium. So this is the percentages of these, not pounds. Now we're talking percentages of each of these cations in there. There also tells you the availability of these nutrients. So they do need to be in certain percentage ranges there so that they are available. Again, an excess of any one of these four cations, your calcium, magnesium, potassium, and sodium, will make it the weakest link in the chain. Again, because it can be pushing something else out of the way or binding it up there to where it's not available for the plant. So again, keep in mind, soil balance is what we're trying to achieve. Okay, talking about these percentages, the highest percentage in this base saturation should be your calcium and magnesium, which should total approximately 80%. Now these, again, you know, nothing is exact. Soils are different everywhere we go, but this, if you get in these ranges, most often you can still work with these and be very successful. So somewhere in approximately 80% calcium magnesium total is good. Your clay soils will need more calcium. Your sandy soils will need more magnesium. And that's because magnesium is a water holder. So you certainly, in a heavy clay soil, you do not want a lot of magnesium to hold excess water there. But in a sandy soil, that magnesium would be very important to you in increasing that water holding capacity. Your cation calcium of that 80% should comprise somewhere between 60 to 70%. Again, that the crop that you're growing can indicate a lot of times whether it should be on that lower or higher side. Again, the soil type. Typically on a sandier soil, you would want that calcium percent to be around 60, and then your magnesium should be around 20 in that sandy soil. And when you move to your clay soils, you should be looking at closer to a 70% calcium and 10% magnesium. So again, when you total those, you're looking at approximately an 80. Again, these can change with certain soil types and crops that you're growing in different regions, but again, if you stick pretty close to these, you should be in very good shape. Okay, talking about the base saturations further, your yield and the quality are determined by these percentages and not the pounds. If you look at a report, it's going to, a lot of times we show you the pounds of these nutrients in there, but when you're trying to determine yield and quality of your crops and all, you need to be looking at these percentages. And we've already talked about your calcium and magnesium and where they need to be. But your other things like potassium should be in about a 3 to 5% base saturation range. Your hydrogen somewhere between 10 and 15%, and then your other bases fit into there, and that should work out to about a 2 to 4%. Okay, what happens when you have imbalance? Again, that just creates more and more problems for you in trying to optimize crop production. So too much calcium can tie up all your other nutrients. Every other nutrient has to ride over the back of calcium to be able to get into the plant. So calcium is very important, but we do have to keep it in an appropriate percentage range there that we were talking about. So somewhere between 60 and 70%. If you get too much nitrogen, if those levels get too high, then it can tie up calcium and other elements and even zinc. And also nitrogen carries a negative charge, and it can move in your soil. So when it moves, it can actually take calcium or magnesium, some of your cations, with it as it goes. So you don't want to get too much nitrogen in there. Again, know your crop, know your soil, and what you need to use, and do not over apply your nitrogen products. And that's why products like our SumaGrow that we have, because of the microbes we have that can pull in free atmospheric nitrogen, we can actually reduce the amounts of nitrogen that we're applying through either chemical fertilizers or manures out there, and help us eliminate some of these problems with nitrogen leaching out and carrying some of our other nutrients with it. Also, the phosphorus can be a problem. It can tie up zinc and copper, and this happens a lot of times where manures are used. We get high phosphorus levels. So it creates problems in locking up some of these very important nutrients that the plants need. The microbes that we have a lot of phosphorus solubilizers in there that can make this phosphorus available, so we can cut way back or even eliminate the application of phosphorus fertilizers, and utilize the microbes in our SumaGrow product to make what small amount of phosphorus is needed for plant uptake. Then moving on to potassium, if this gets too high, it can tie up boron in your soil, which is important for a wide variety of crops, especially your root type crops like potatoes, things like that produce underground. Okay, moving on to pH. This is something that most people, if they don't know anything else about soils, they've at least heard about the pH. And again, pH refers to the acidity or alkalinity of a soil. pH actually stands for potential hydrogen, just in case you wasn't aware of that. Your range of pH goes from 0 to 14. 7 is considered the neutral point. Of course, being lower than 7 increases in acidity. Above 7 increases in alkalinity. A change of 1 unit in the pH scale represents a 10-fold change in acidity or alkalinity. So dropping from a 7 down to a 6 means it drops 10 times. A soil of a pH of 6 is 10 times more acidic than one of 7. Then if you drop to 5, that means it's 100 times more acidic than a pH of 7. Okay, so how's pH affected in a soil? A lot of things affect how the fluctuation of pH is. Certainly the fertilizers that you use, especially nitrogen fertilizers, most of them are acidifying and will lower the pH of a soil. The amount of rain you get, areas that get high amounts of rain tend to move things out, especially your calcium, when nitrogen moves and things like that, again, lowering your pH. Organic matter has an effect on your pH. Certainly a higher organic matter improves your nutrient holding ability and helping balance nutrients there and maintaining a more adequate pH. And soil microorganisms, you have acidifying and alkaline producing type microorganisms out there in the soil that work with plants, and they can have an effect on your pH. Other things that influence pH are calcium, which we apply calcium to help raise our pH or improve the alkalinity of the soil. But magnesium, potassium, and sodium also influence pH. And your magnesium and potassium actually will change pH faster than what calcium will in the soil. Calcium takes longer to do this. This is just a map showing you kind of a worldwide view of what our pH ranges look like. Your red zones there are your more acidic type soils. The yellow areas are neutral. The blue are your alkaline type soils. Okay, when we need to adjust our pH to raise it up to a level that we need to make it more alkaline, limestone is the most effective and inexpensive way to do that. There are two major types of liming products. You have your dolomitic limestone, which consists of magnesium and calcium. Then you have your calcitic limestone, which is strictly just calcium. If you have a soil that has a good bit of clay and maybe high magnesium, you would not want to use the dolomitic limestone, because again, you would just be increasing your magnesium and causing problems for you. Actually, if you let your magnesium get too high in the soil, it itself will become unavailable for plant uptake. So where you have high magnesium, then just go with a calcitic type limestone that is strictly just calcium. But again, these are your two major options for liming to adjust your pH. What this does, your calcium does influence pH. That's actually what you're adding in your lime product. And we mentioned also your magnesium, potassium, and sodium will affect your pH there. Lime increases the microbial activity, so it's very important to have a good calcium percentage in your soil there and the alkalinity right, so that your microbes are happier there in the soil and can perform more appropriately. It also helps manage decomposition because of the microbes there, and it helps overcome potential for calcium and magnesium deficiencies. The pH will adjust to the proper level when all your nutrients are corrected. So again, achieving soil balance helps to maintain a good pH. Any nutrient required will take precedence over pH. Again, pH is very important in having that calcium right, but if you have a nutrient that is lacking in the soil, that's going to take precedence first over your pH, because you have to get these balanced out. Then when all of your nutrients are balanced, the pH will be right. And that's something a lot of people don't realize, that if you get all the appropriate nutrients out there and balanced properly, then it will maintain a proper pH all by itself. Thirdly, as calcium concentration increases, it takes less nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium to do the same job. So again, calcium is probably the most important nutrient that we have out there in the soil. And again, every other nutrient has to ride over the back of calcium for it to be able to get into the plant. Okay, organic matter is another area that you will see on most of your soil reports. And this is, again, very important. It serves many roles. Your soil microorganisms decay organic matter and cycle nutrients back into forms that the plant can actually utilize. It's also an important link between soil carbon and your crop for your soil microorganisms. Without microbes, vital soil nutrients like your phosphorus remain present but unavailable for crop usage. And I mentioned about the microbes that we have in our SumaGrow product that are phosphorus solubilizers. And not only phosphorus, but other nutrients that can be bound up also, that they will help unlock and make available for cycling through the plant. Okay, also organic matter, it can give you enhanced development of soil aggregates. Again, it helps keep your soil open to where you get better pore space, which allows better infiltration and percolation of your water and air down through that soil. Your organic matter also improves or increases your water holding capacity. It also gives you greater capacity to hold and release nutrients. So that organic matter will help capture and hold those nutrients there, but when the plant needs it, it also is there and can be released for them to take up and utilize. Organic matter, again, important for your nutrient storage. We've mentioned that several times. It also improves your cultivation ease or the tilt of your soil. So it actually makes it easier to pull equipment through the soil, so it takes less horsepower and less fuel when you have the soil is in good tilt and good condition. It also, organic matter promotes further biological activity, so it's very important there to maintain a good microbial population in the soil if you have an adequate organic matter level there. Talking about the water holding capacity, I'll give you a few examples here. An organic matter of 1% can hold 14,400 gallons of water per acre. Now, if you increase that from a 1 to a 3% organic matter, that water holding capacity increases to 43,000, a little over 43,000. So just a 2% increase, 2% increase in organic matter will move you from a little over 14,000 to 43,000 gallons of water per acre. That's tremendous. Then from that 3%, which has 43,000 gallons of water, if you move up to a 5% organic matter, you've increased that water holding capacity to 80,000 gallons per acre. So again, organic matter is very, very important when you're trying to maximize your water utilization for your plants, so water holding capacity and nutrient holding capacity of the soil. Also, a soil with a 5% organic matter will hold roughly 100 pounds of available nitrogen for that year's crop, which is basically about 20 pounds for each 1% of organic matter. So again, the higher the organic matter, the more nitrogen that is naturally available in that soil for plant utilization. So that means less nitrogen that you have to apply through other sources. Okay, how can organic matter help with fight against soil compaction? Okay, your surface residue restricts compaction. It actually acts as a sponge there for you by absorbing the weight of equipment and also by absorbing water. Your organic residues are less dense than soil particles. So they do not compact. They help keep that soil open. It allows for better root penetration, so these roots create voids in space, which allows for air and water movement through there. These roots also serve as a biological valve to control oxygen in the soil. Roots cannot grow in the soil if they don't have oxygen, so the deeper you can get that oxygen into the soil, the deeper your roots can work. Your roots can supply exudates to glue your soil particles together to form macro aggregates and supply food for microbes. So again, just more information there about how your organic matter is very, very important. Okay, talk a little bit about humus. Humus is the final stage of organic matter. That's the point that you want to get to. So this refers to any organic matter that has reached that final point of stability where it's not going to break down anymore. This humus improves the structure of soil and contributes to moisture and nutrient retention. It also can help hold the equivalent of 80 to 90% of its weight in water. So again, it's a very important component of your organic matter there. It allows soil organisms to feed and reproduce and is often described as the life force of the soil. So again, it's important to manage your soil organic matter and build up of humus in that soil if you want to hold water and nutrients there and keep a healthy microbial population in your soil. Okay, let's move on and talk about some of the nutrients that you're going to be seeing on the soil report and what they do and the purposes that they serve out there. Now, a lot of your soil reports will not give you a actual figure on nitrogen there because nitrogen is so volatile in the soil. But again, if you go back to your organic matter, we said for every 1%, it can hold up to 20 pounds of available nitrogen. So just keep that in mind. So our nitrogen, of course, is a very important part of every living cell. It's an important part of your proteins, DNA, and RNA in your plants. It's involved in photosynthesis. It's an important component of your vitamins, and it aids in carbohydrate production. But there can also be negatives in using nitrogen. Nitrogen has a negative charge and it attracts a positive charge, which is good in being able to hold on to some of your catons. But again, it can be a problem if you get excess nitrogen because it can cause weakness in plants, or what we call lodging, where plants become weak and they fall over during wind events, things like this. Too much nitrogen can tie up copper and zinc. It can also takes either sodium or calcium as a passenger. What this means, whenever it moves, if it moves with water, then it can take sodium or calcium with it. And again, these are two of your cations that are important, your positive charged elements. And for every % of calcium taken out by nitrogen, magnesium goes up 1%. So, if you have high magnesium, this is the last thing you want to do is to remove calcium and push that magnesium up even higher. Anhydrous is a form of nitrogen that's used in some farming practices. A lot of times in corn production, it's knifed in after that crop is up and growing. But because of its high amount of ammonia in there, it can be toxic to living organisms, and it raises the pH. So it can be detrimental to some of your beneficial microbes in the soil. So we have to be careful about utilizing anhydrous and when we get in association with our microbes. Another one, phosphorus, that you're going to see. This helps with energy exchange. It promotes early root formation and growth. It's important for seed formation. It increases your water use and efficiency by the plant, and it hastens maturity in your plants. Potassium, that you'll see a lot of times on your reports. This is important for plant growth, for photosynthesis, for your protein synthesis in the plant. Also improves your quality of seeds and fruits. It improves winter hardiness. It kind of acts like an antifreeze in the root system of plants. So if you want to protect root systems of plants during the cold months of the year, then a fall application of potassium can help do that. Also, potassium is important in increasing disease resistance in plants. Then we get to calcium. I told you calcium is probably the most important element in the soil. It's important for cell division and formation. It reduces plant respiration. It increases fruit set, and it stimulates microbial activity. Then your magnesium is a key element in chlorophyll production. It improves utilization of phosphorus, and it's an activator and component of many of your plant enzymes. Sulfur, you want to, when you're looking at levels on your report, you want probably a 20 to 25 parts per million minimum, which is the equivalent of 40 to 50 pounds of sulfur per acre. So if you see something reported in parts per million, if you will multiply that times 2, that will give you the pounds per acre that's available. Okay, also adequate sulfur improves the palatability of any crop. So it doesn't matter what it is that you're growing, whether it's a food crop for humans or whether it's a forage for cattle, it will increase the palatability or the taste. It improves the overall taste of that crop. It also helps control excesses such as magnesium and sodium. Again, sulfur must move with water to carry any of these excesses out. So if you do have high sodium or high magnesium, sulfur can be used to take these out, but you do have to have water to move that sulfur and get it, leached down through the soil to move these out of the way and get them balanced there. So if you're in a dry region with no irrigation, it's going to be very tough to do. Also, calcium must be greater than 60% saturation. We talked about base saturations earlier. You have to have that calcium at least 60% or above for that sulfur to be able to work and carry these excesses out. Get quite a few questions when I do talk to people about sulfur, about, how do I get sulfur or what sources, things like that. Probably the most commonly used is what's called elemental sulfur. So wherever you get your fertilizer products, they should be able to help you get elemental sulfur to apply. Ammonium sulfate is another source. Again, you're getting a nitrogen source along with sulfur. And then copper sulfate is a third option. Okay, sodium, again, this is something that a lot of times can cause us problems because it gets excess sodium, which builds up salts in the soils. So anything above 3% on your report would be considered excess. If you have proper calcium and magnesium saturation, this can help compensate for higher saturations of sodium. Okay, zinc is next. This is probably the most universally helpful of all the micronutrients. It's instrumental in moisture absorption. You want to have a minimum of 6 parts per million or 12 pounds per acre of this zinc when you look at your report. It's very important for pecans and other nut-producing trees, things like that. They're zinc sensitive, so they need that zinc in there to be able to produce a healthy nut crop. Boron. This is one that is very small amounts are needed, a minimum of 0.080 parts per million. The boron does increase nitrogen availability to plants. And if you're growing legumes, any type of clovers or alfalfa, things like that, boron is important in nodulation of these legumes, and forming those nodules that produce nitrogen that we want to help build up our nitrogen levels in the soil or organic matter. Okay, in summary, I know we've covered quite a bit, but we probably haven't covered enough to give you everything that you would probably like to know. But there's a lot of good books out there that you can get if you're interested in in learning more about soils and the nutrients and their availability and things like that. There's some real good tools out there for you to study from. But to summarize what we've covered tonight, again, a soil analysis report is a very important tool to help you manage nutrient removal and replacement in there. So we utilize that a lot here when making recommendations for our SumaGrow product. We need to know what's available, where we're starting at, what crop is out there, what it removes, and so that we can come up with a good nutrient management plan, and so that we can get to this 50% fertilizer reduction that we've talked about. And this is very doable. We've seen it time and time again. When we have a balanced soil, we can go to that 50% reduction in chemical fertilizers and still have an increased yield and increased quality of our crop. And that basically means more money in the farmer's pocket. A healthy soil has a healthy biological system. So we have to be able to support these microorganisms, earthworms, all types of living things in the soil that help keep our soils open for better air and water movement in there. We need to keep in mind our organic matter, do everything we can to help build that up, and the humus that, again, helps hold nutrients, helps hold water, and furthers our biological activity in the soil. Then balancing our soil nutrients is very important. Again, this is something that can take time to do, but in the long run it will pay off. Again, if you have a soil that's deficient in something, it's more important to get that level up than it is to worry about your pH, because again, once you get all your nutrients balanced, the pH will be balanced. And then again, calcium is important to microbial activity. It's important for any nutrient that needs to get into the plant, because again, all your nutrients ride over the back of calcium. Okay, I think that's kind of covers everything that I had for you this evening. Again, I hope we've touched on some things that will help you, or at least generate some interest for you to do a little more study in this. If you do have any specific questions, we'll try to address those. I'll check with Aaron here and see if we have any questions that have been posted. Or
I don't have any on chat. You can either type it in the text box or dial *6 to unmute if you'd like to ask any questions.
Again, we appreciate your participation this evening with us. I do have a couple of announcements that I will announce while we're waiting to see if we do have any questions to come in. On October the 8th and 9th, we will be having our next training session here at BioSoil. So any of you folks out there that may be new licensees or new distributors or people interested in any of these roles, we need to get the word out and get those folks here for this training. So we're pushing 2 weeks or less now coming up for this training. So please make those contacts and get folks registered up for this training class.
Okay, we had one question so far. What percentage of OM is considered good or great OM?
Okay. Well, that's going to vary. Again, your soil a lot of times dictates that. If you have a very sandy soil, you're going to have very low organic matter, very low nutrient and water holding capacity like that. So a lot of times in these sandy soils, your organic matter may be in the 1 to 2% range, which again is very low. That doesn't give you a lot of room to work with. So if you have a soil like that, all you can do is try to add amendments in there and using cover crops and working these in year after year to help build up organic matter. But certainly I think if you can start getting up above 5% and really the higher the better, but you can actually have a soil that has a good bit of water holding and nutrient holding capacity, if you can at least get it up in that 5% range, I think you'll be doing very well. Some places naturally have, organic matter that may be 8, 10%, maybe even higher, but on average, a lot of them are lower than that, especially soils that have been farmed year after year for many, many years. The more that soil is tilled, the quicker you're going to degrade and lower that organic matter percentage out there. So a lot of soils that at one time in their infancy might have had an organic matter closer to 20 nowadays can be in the single digits. They just devastated the organic matter by over-tilling. So again, just strive to do everything you can to build it up, but certainly if you can get it to 5 or more and work from there and keep building, I think you'll have a soil that you can help balance out other nutrients in and be very productive.
Okay, we had another question. Can we send in soil samples for a quick analysis while we are getting used to the process of soil results?
We have limited capabilities here at BioSoil. We can do pH and a few basic things. The best thing to do is to find a good quality soil lab in your state or region there. Most of your land-grant universities do have soil labs that you can send soil samples to and get a pretty quick turnaround. A lot of these fees will, per sample, will run anywhere from close to $10 up to maybe $25 a sample according to what you request on there. But still, for the information you get, it's well worth it. You do not have to do these every year. Generally, if you can do them every 3 years, that's wonderful. That gives you enough information to work with. Some farmers do them on a yearly basis. So it just depends on the operation. But I would encourage you to send samples on to a good soils lab and get that done. Then when you get those results, if you have questions, those can be emailed to the office here. I'll be glad to look at those and help interpret those if you do have questions.
Okay. Would certain areas of the U.S. have better OM, or does that not matter on region?
Yes, certainly. Even state to state, here in Mississippi, we have areas of the Delta and the Black Prairie Land and all that have a lot higher organic matter levels than we do here in southeast Mississippi. When we're getting down closer to the coastal plains and things like that, we have a higher sand content in our soil. So, and it can change within fields, actually, a good bit. It would surprise you sometimes when you get soil changes, and which is going to affect the organic matter levels there too. So there are a wide variety of organic matter levels, not only in states and in regions and things like that, but even on individual farms.
Are there any other questions?
Again, thanks for everybody's participation. If there are other questions that come up later, please just email or call us here at the office, and we'll be glad to help you with those, and hope everyone has a good evening.